Don't worry about the fuse, guys. I got a lighter.
Black powder!
Illinois Adventure is made possible in part by a grant from Country Insurance and Financial Services.
Today on Illinois Adventure, we'll tee off at one of this state's most scenic courses, learn about colonial life inside these walls, participate in one of the fastest growing target sports, plus we'll discover French history at this old cemetery. All this on Illinois Adventure. It was an empire that stretched from Quebec down the Mississippi River to New Orleans, but it was one that would not have survived without Illinois. And while many came here in search of gold, the gold they found was not mineral. Hi, I'm Jim Wilhelm. Today we're at what was the administrative headquarters of France's Illinois country, Fort de Chartres. And while it was the third fort that the French built in the area, it was the most permanent. The first was a simple structure formed by a wooden stockade, but it gets very damp here during the spring and the wood rotted. The second fort was larger, with 4 bastions and several buildings inside. It too eventually succumbed to the elements. In 1753, this fort, the largest of the 3, was finished. Yet it was more than just a replacement, it was a statement. At a time of rising tensions with the British, this stone structure dramatically showed the power of France and its determination to stay. And what first brought the French to this area? Beaver pelts. But what the trappers quickly learned was that because of the mild winters here, those pelts were worthless in Europe. The French also thought they would find gold here, and they did, but not in veins. About 5 miles from the fort are these limestone bluffs from which the fort and many area buildings got their stone. However, the real wealth of the Illinois country lay between those bluffs and the Mississippi River. This area was and is very productive farmland, and the gold was the grain raised here. So much so that by 1750, this area was shipping 800,000 pounds of flour, and this area had become known as the Breadbasket of France in the New World. Not just flour, but also hams, onion, dried beans, and buffalo meat. Most of it was shipped downriver to New Orleans. It's said that without Illinois' produce, France's lower Louisiana colony would have faced starvation. That produce was exchanged for merchandise from France, which was brought here for distribution to other Midwest posts. Behind me is the King's Storehouse, which held not only the supplies for the fort, but for the major traders in the area as well. This was a busy place. There were no trees inside the fort as there are today, and the grass would have been trampled into dust. Outside the walls was the town of Chartres, and just across the road was another village. Welcome back to Fort de Chartres, which was the location of the administrative center of France's Illinois country. It was a country that extended from Peoria to Alabama and from the Kansas River to the Wabash River. This foundation marks the spot where the commandant, his family, and servants lived. Plus, it's the only building in the fort with its own private wine cellar. The commandant was both a military commander and governor of the Illinois country. Next to it was the government house, where political business was conducted and where the officers lived. Then on both sides of a center path were barracks, each one designed to house about 75 French Marines. It's doubtful whether they ever held a full contingency of men. Some would have been stationed at various outposts, while others would have lived in nearby villages. In fact, soldiers were encouraged to start their own businesses so they could stay in the area. In France's colonial New World, this was probably the best location to be assigned. The only trouble with the British was way back in Ohio, and the Indians in this area weren't terribly aggressive. Plus, the food was plentiful. But it wasn't all idyllic. Pay was slow in coming, coinage was scarce, uniforms, which they had to pay for out of their own salaries, were not sent regularly, and they were of poor quality. But it was a higher standard of living than the life they left behind. The only original structure still standing from the French era is the powder magazine. It has been called the oldest building in Illinois and is an indication of the supply and storage function of Fort de Chartres. When it was built, this was the second largest magazine in North America. The only larger one was in Quebec City, Canada. After the troops left here, this building was used as a horse and hog barn for a neighboring farm. Another interesting fact is that the entrance visitors used was actually the rear of the fort. The main gate was on the other side, facing the Mississippi River. Today, a levee wall stands in its place, defending against an old enemy, Mother Nature. Welcome back to Fort de Chartres. This was once the administrative center of France's Illinois country. Here, civil and criminal trials were conducted, traders stored their supplies, and soldiers were reassigned to other outposts. The fort itself covered approximately 4 acres and was surrounded by 15-foot walls. Inside, cannons were placed on wooden platforms. After firing, they would be pulled back and the portal doors shut to protect the gunners while they reloaded. This fort was built during a relatively tranquil period, more as a symbol than as a defensive base. In fact, a persistent story that's been told over the years is of one commandant who had issued an order that the cannon not be fired for ceremonial purposes to prevent the walls from cracking. Those walls were covered with lime mortar, a kind of whitewash. Some folks wrote that from a distance the fort was so white it appeared to glow. Unfortunately, this statement of France's power and permanence was constructed during her waning years. In 1763, 10 years after the fort was finished, the French lost the French-Indian War. The result was that they forfeited all the land on this side of the Mississippi River. The Illinois country now belonged to the British, but it was 2 years before they arrived. In anticipation of the arrival of their dreaded enemy, many of the area villagers moved across the river, some of them taking their homes with them. When the British arrived, one of their first orders prohibited anyone from leaving the area. The history of the fort and of French colonial life is retold at a museum where the King's Storehouse once stood. On display are some of the bits and pieces of tableware and bottles found during excavations from the fort. There are even bios of some of the people whose names can still be found on area maps or who had historical ties to the fort, such as Francois Duvalier. He was the French official who formally surrendered the fort to the British. Duvalier married the commandant's daughter. His brother, who was an officer who served out of this fort, was killed by the British militia in a skirmish along the Ohio River. That militia was under the command of Major George Washington. Yet the British stay at the fort only lasted 6 years. They were driven away by Mother Nature. During their time here, the Mississippi River kept creeping closer to the front wall until it was eventually undermining the wall. In 1771, a small flood caused the walls to collapse. Thinking that the river would continue to eat away at the fort, the British moved downstream to Kaskaskia, but the joke was on them. After they left, the main channel began to drift back away from the fort. Today it's about a mile away from Fort de Chartres, but the walls and buildings did come down as nearby townsfolk took the stone for use in other structures. The fort rose again during the Depression when the CCC rebuilt a couple of the buildings and portions of the wall. Well, what's really strange is that in some respects, the fort is still serving its original purpose, although not in the way the founders intended. You'll remember the French built a stone fort to symbolize their permanence in the area, and it did. Today the fort is still here, the colonial French flag is still flying, and French names dot the landscape. So in a way, the French presence in the area has never left. During the first week of June and later in the fall, the fort's grounds returned to the past as host to one of the largest downstate rendezvous. And during the year, for special occasions and for special groups, staff members don period costume to conduct tours. For dates and times of those events or for information about the fort, call 618-284-7230.